You're boarding an airplane. Passengers move down a single aisle, stop to store bags, find their seats, and block everyone behind them while they do it. Some people sit down quickly, others take longer, and those small delays start stacking up across the cabin. How much do those interruptions slow down the entire boarding process? And what happens when movement through a shared space becomes the bottleneck? There's a model for that. Welcome to Model Monday, a series where we break down scenarios in different industries, organizations, and departments and explain how you can build a simulation of them in Process Playground. Let's model it. Today we're going to work on an aircraft boarding model where we'll see how long it takes for passengers to go between different points in our process. To start, we're going to create a couple of items, starting with a passenger, and we'll make it green. Then we're going to create a scan-to-scan tracker representing an airline worker who is testing the time to get on the plane and will board last. And we'll make that one red. Now we're going to create a queue to hold our passengers. First, we'll drag out a queue and we're going to rename this Passenger Load. We're going to turn off Allow All Items and we're going to add the passenger item. This will allow us to set the initial on hand and we'll set that to 165. Next, we'll add a queue to create our scan-to-scan tracker. We're going to turn off Allow All Items, and we're going to have an initial on hand of 1. We're going to set the priority here to 9, so it will be handled last. The priority of an item indicates the order that those items should be handled. Where setting a priority to 1 means that the item should be handled first, while the higher numbers, like 9, indicate that an item should be handled later. We'll create a queue called Gate Area, and then we'll hook up both of these blocks. The first step in our process will be when the gate agent calls passengers, then they travel to the line. We'll drag out an activity block to represent walking over to the line. We'll say there are 12 spots available to be moving towards the line, and that the processing time is triangular, between 1.25, 1.5 is the mode, and up to 2 minutes. Now we're going to scan the boarding pass. We only have one scanner, and that time is triangular with 0.1 as the minimum, 0.13 as the mode, and 0.25 minutes as the max. Once we've scanned our ticket, we're going to go onto the jetway. Because we want to represent the action of moving down the jetway, we'll use an activity block. We'll say the jetway can hold 17 people, and we'll set this to 17 servers available. The processing time is triangular with a minimum of 1.8 and a mode of 2.1, but it could take up to 4 minutes if things get backed up. Once we're through there, we're in the aisle. Again, because we want to represent the time that it usually takes to go down the aisle, we'll use an activity block. There are 6 spots available in the aisle. Only when somebody sits down, the next person can come in. We're going to say that it's triangular, taking anywhere from a half a minute to a typical time of 0.7 minutes and could take all the way up to 2 minutes. We'll add an exit block, and this represents the passengers are seated. We might want to figure out the specific time between 2 areas of our process. By adding a timer block, we can actually add the specific time between 2 blocks to each item for further analysis. In this case, we'll drag out a timer block and call it Gate to Scan Time. We'll add entering the gate area as when time will start, and scan boarding pass, which will stop the timer when the item leaves that block. We could also look at the scan to seat time, starting from when they begin scanning the boarding pass and ending once they have left the aisle. You'll notice the labels that appear under the relevant blocks. If you change the color of your block up here at the top, the labels will change to match the color. Now we can run the model with an expectation to complete it in 40 minutes. We have 165 passengers and 1 scanner. We can see 12 passengers traveling and the number in the gate area decreasing. Passengers scan their boarding passes, enter the jetway, move through the aisle, and get seated. We may be particularly interested in the time passengers take between the gate and the scanner, and between the scanner and sitting down. When we click on the Gate to Scan timer and show our time elapsed graph, we'll see a histogram of the time it took for the passengers to move through just that part of the process. Once we close the graph, we can also turn on the mean time so that it appears underneath the timer block. We'll also apply this to all timers. Let's also take a look at the time elapsed graph for the time between the scanner and sitting down. We could also look at the item report, and we could see the individual timer times for each passenger. You can see the gate to scan time, which starts at the beginning of the simulation when the passengers arrive at the gate area, as well as the scan to seat time, which is the time from boarding pass scanning to finding their seat. The TLT, or total lead time, would represent the time in the entire process from the gate to the seat. Finally, this scan-to-scan tracker, our last person to board, can be the final example of how long it might take to move through our process. The item report can be exported to Engine Room for further analysis and processing. So in a nutshell, that's the aircraft boarding model, but the real value is in what you can experiment with. By modeling passengers moving through a shared aisle with different processing times, you can see how small delays and blocked movement impact the overall boarding process. And it's not just airplanes. The same pattern shows up in warehouse aisles, people moving through security checkpoints, vehicles merging into a single lane, or any process where movement through a constrained space affects overall flow. From here, you can start to ask real design questions. How much does variability in processing time affect the system? When does congestion start to build? Does improving individual processing time meaningfully improve overall flow? Those are the kinds of trade-offs this model is built to explore. That's the model. Now go experiment. Happy modeling!